Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I have Lori Shemek in the house with me today, and we are going to talk about intermittent fasting and ketogenic dieting. So make sure you stay tuned. I just want to tell you a little bit about Lori first. Dr. Lori Shemek is a leading fat cell researcher and a recognized authority on inflammation and its role in weight loss, preventing disease, and optimizing health. Dr. Shemek is the best-selling author of How to Fight Fatflammation and the best-selling author of Fire Up Your Fat Burn. She is a leading health and weight loss expert and also known as the Inflammation Terminator. She has made it her mission to help clients lose weight and educate the public on the toxic side effects of certain foods and lifestyle choices and how they create inflammation in the body, resulting in weight gain. She is a leading authority on inflammation and its role in weight loss, preventing disease, and optimizing health. The Huffington Post has recognized Dr. Shemek twice as one of the top 16 health and fitness experts, alongside such names as Dr. Oz, and the Huffington Post has also recognized her as one of the top 35 diet and nutrition experts. Dr. Lori Shemek is a regular health contributor to Fox News, a health expert for the ABC TV show Good Morning Texas. And she has been featured on NBC, The Doctors, CNN, Fox News, Dr. Oz's Best Life magazine, Prevention magazine, Health, Shape, Women's Day, Red Book, Ladies Home Journal, and way more than I could even shake a stick at. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Lori to the show.
That is so nice of you. Thank you. So nice to be here with you. Really, it's nice to be back here with you, actually.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Off where we started.
Yeah, we're starting. We're talking about intermittent fasting the last time at the end of the podcast, and now that's going to be our topic.
Right. So a good one at that, I must say.
We were talking a little bit about how, just a little off topic, how funny it is when you first get on the internet and you do a Facebook Live. I know I went sideways one time while cooking, doing a cooking show.
Oh no, while cooking. Oh, that's funny.
So people were like.
I did. It was my very first interview on my Facebook page. It was live. And I'm like putting my finger across the screen because it says scroll to your left to add them to the interview, right? And it was hilarious. People are going, "Is your screen dirty, Lori?" It's so funny. And it worked out, but it definitely awkward.
It can be awkward, you guys. So I hope you enjoy our authenticity today, because we are real and we are live and we are bringing you significant facts and science on how you can boost your metabolism with intermittent fasting. And so I'm just going to dive into some of what you talked about recently on the Doctors. Mm-hmm. What was that like when you were on the Doctors, and what type of things did you leave with the audience?
Well, it was wonderful. And the audience that was there got a whole lot of information. But unfortunately, when it comes to the general public, to the general TV audience, they edit out quite a bit. So essentially, people knew that there were negatives and there were positives to it. And Dr. Joel Kahn and I were standing for the pros of intermittent fasting, and the other two were physicians standing for the negative. They were against it. And so it was a very interesting debate. And it was actually very exciting. There was a live studio audience, and first time I ever debated on TV. It was definitely interesting. But yeah, it was good, but definitely edited a lot of it. So the wonders of TV.
I can totally appreciate what you're saying with the pros and the cons. when I was on with Dr. and Louise Gittleman one time on, I think it was the Mike and Juliet show on Fox, they wanted us to have, they had the, I can't remember what her name was, but she comes on and shoots you down, basically, you know, and I felt like she was attacking Dr. and Louise. So I'm like, what's going on? And they had your own little cheering section. People are like, you know, every time you say something, they're cheering.
Oh,
and,
I love that.
And so I was laughing because it was so bizarre. And then it felt great, but you're like, this is so weird. Every time I say something, they're like, whoa! And
right?
Yeah. And they wanted me to say something negative, like they were trying to get me, you know, the lady that was kind of the negative attack for the con side. And then she said something, and I started to talk. They said they wanted me to react. They wanted it to be reactive, but they had turned off my microphone. So, yeah, I look outraged. Like,
yeah, what you do?
So it was just funny. I just think it's funny the things that happen to you. But anyway, what are the pros? Let's go over the best part. What are the pros of intermittent fasting, and what are the benefits?
Right. So the pros are what most people use intermittent fasting for, and that's weight loss. Okay. Weight loss happens for most people, not everybody. It just depends on how much you're eating, really. And we'll go into that in a little bit. But those who intermittent fast, even if they overdo their caloric intake, say 3 days in a row, for example, if you're intermittent fasting every day, you're still, your overall general calorie intake is lower. So you're, just the in and out of calories is not something that I necessarily adhere to, but there is the law of thermodynamics, right? So if you eat a lot of calories, you're going to gain weight, and no matter if they're healthy or not. And the same is true as if you don't eat enough calories, you eat 500 calories a day, you're going to lose weight. Okay. So that being said, the intermittent fasting diet is excellent for reducing weight. And not only that, it helps boost cellular health, which is very important. And I do intermittent fasting as well. I am doing it right now as we speak, and it's very beneficial. I mean, I chose to do it primarily for cell health, okay, for cellular health. And when you do it for that reason, what happens is your cells become more efficient, your mitochondria increase in number, and they become healthier. So you have these little mitochondria. We all remember back in biology in high school, right? Learning about the little tiny organelles that run our cells. They're actually the little energizer bunnies of our cells, and without them we would not be alive. And so as we age naturally, or if we have poor diets, and or if we, as I mentioned, age, we don't exercise, we're sedentary, we begin to lose our mitochondria, and they also begin to fail. They slow down, if you will. And so when you do intermittent fasting or you do the ketogenic diet, it really bumps them up, the number of them and their energy, okay, which translates to a healthier you. And that translates to a leaner you too, because the more mitochondria you have, the less inflammation you have. Inflammation, weight gain, and poor mitochondrial health all go hand in hand. So really important to, if you think about really what everything boils down to is cell health, cellular health. And another cell benefit that happens when we do intermittent fasting is something called autophagy. And it's a cool name, isn't it? Autophagy. But what it means is that it's essentially allows, when you're not eating, your cells to clean house, if you will. There's a lot of housekeeping that goes on. And when we're eating, the cells really don't have much opportunity to do that. And so what happens is, because eating really is one of the most energy demanding things that we do, It takes up a lot of our cell's energy. We start collecting debris within the cell. We get little fragments and junk in there. And so when we stop eating, autophagy means self-eating, okay? The cell then uses some of the junk, it repurposes it, it cleans it.
That is really cool.
Yeah, and it's so important to do, no matter what your health goals are, to whether it's weight loss or fitness or whatever, is to absolutely make sure that you don't eat all the time. I used to be the breakfast queen, okay? I used to be the one who said you have to eat your breakfast because, you know, you don't want your blood sugar to drop so low that you're going to be ravenous, right? So, you know, I would recommend that people eat breakfast, you know, obviously a healthy one. But, you know, now with the mountains of research, the literature that's pouring in about intermittent fasting, the ketogenic diet, it is undeniable right now. And so,
yeah, this is a hot topic. I mean, this is being discussed like on the airwaves like crazy, and people are getting amazing results with doing both either intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet. Can you explain what does ketogenic mean, you know, for people that may not understand what that is?
right. So the ketogenic diet is essentially eating a diet that is virtually no carbs, okay, if you do it properly. Now, depending on who you are, some people, let me backtrack. So the typical recommendation is 20 to 100 grams of carbs a day, okay? You look at a cup of pasta is 45 grams of carbs. And who eats even 1 cup of that, right? So it's not much. And you have to incorporate your veggies. Everything needs to be under that 100 gram, okay? But depending on who you are, you could eat 150 grams of carbs a day if you're metabolically flexible and still be in ketosis. All right. So when you're in ketosis, it's your body's ability to produce ketones. You're using your fat for fuel. And that's what we want, ideally. And that happens with intermittent fasting too. So preferably for me, I chose to do intermittent fasting, but all the same benefits happen with intermittent fasting as on the ketogenic diet, except more powerfully with the ketogenic diet because there is not a rise in insulin. And so the object of being in ketosis and on the ketogenic diet is to keep insulin as flat as possible. Okay, that's very important to remember because insulin not only it's a growth factor, which means it stores fat, but it also is a cancer promoter if you have an excess of, can be, an excess of carbohydrates intake. Okay, so they have found that by tamping down on the insulin response that a whole host of benefits occur. Longevity occurs, brain health occurs, lowered inflammation occurs. And I remind you that all of these benefits happen with intermittent fasting as well. And muscle mass, more muscle mass, which is important for everybody, better fitness, as I mentioned. And, you know, people in the Alzheimer's and dementia communities are seeing symptoms mitigated with the ketogenic diet. Diabetes has been reversed or improved. People are getting off their insulin. I believe it's Verda that just came out February 14th with a study showing that simply by doing this low carb diet, some are low carb, some are in true ketosis, they've been able to get off their insulin or at least cut their insulin dosage in half, okay? And that's very important to know. So the list of benefits: skin health, brain health, focus, energy through the roof. You feel somewhat, when you're, for example, fasting, intermittent fasting, you feel a little bit euphoric because you're...
oh yeah, that's funny. That is the exact thing that I tell people is that because when I do it on, I have the Sweat Online challenge. When we do it on there, you know, people are kind of a little afraid, like, I'm going to not be eating for how long? You know, it kind of, you're like, whoa, that's against what they've been taught for years and years. And, but I told them, I'm like, it's like this euphoria. You get this euphoric feeling when you have completely like cleaned out your cells, and even a detox sometimes, like a fast will do that. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you do. And, you know, and it's primarily because you have more adrenaline. That's because back in the Paleolithic times, you know, we didn't have food available 24/7 to us. We would miss a meal. We would miss days of eating. And so we needed that energy to go hunt for food. So the adrenaline response occurs, and that's what gives us that you know, wonderful, focused, energetic feeling that we get. And so, yeah, so the ketogenic diet is fantastic. Exogenous ketones are another way to go get into ketosis without having to wait weeks or months to actually.
Oh yeah. What is that product you're talking about that could help us again?
Yeah. So it's called, my product is Prove It, and it is an exogenous ketone, meaning that you don't have to be on the ketogenic diet to get into ketosis. So it helps stop sugar cravings, hunger, it bumps up your energy, it increases skin health, collagen, it mitigates, as I mentioned, all of the benefits, mitigates the effects of diabetes. And, you know, autism. For a lot of people have mentioned, one lady just mentioned that her son, for the first time, has been able to get off his autism medicine simply, this was just the other day, by taking the ketones. And it's a powder drink is what it is. It's very easy. But, you know, those are examples. So the ketogenic diet, exogenous ketones, or intermittent fasting. Those are 3 ways to really increase your ketone level. You can also do it with exercise. You can, you know, just simply by going for a walk, you can improve your cell health. But ideally, you want a more therapeutic approach, right? So you do want, your diet is 90% of everything that you experience in terms of your health. Or lack thereof. So when you focus on your diet, it's extremely beneficial to you when you do it in the right way.
What is the history of intermittent fasting? How did it begin and evolve?
Well, it's, as I mentioned, back in the day, in the, you know, the caveman day, we didn't have food available to us. We now are, you know, we're looking at, you know, 3 meals a day with snacks and more snacks in between. And back then, you know, they had to go hunt for their food. They sometimes didn't find it. And sometimes, for example, in terms of sugar, they'd find, you know, a honey patch where they'd find honey, and they'd gorge on the honey because they knew that that was few and far between, those hives, right? They may find a patch of berries, and that would also, they would gorge on those too. But that was it. That was, you know, those were the few times that they would actually, you know, get those treats. Okay. Now, what is it for us? It's right there for us. It makes it really easy to overdo it. And so, as I mentioned before, when we eat, that is the most energy demanding activity that we do. Okay. So have you ever felt where you are, you know, you're just tired and lethargic after eating, say after Thanksgiving dinner, right? After a carb heavy meal, for example.
Oh yeah, it just makes you instantly like sleepy.
Right. So that's an example of all the blood going right to your digestive tract, away from your brain. And that's why you feel sleepy and you don't feel energetic and focused, right? So we want to make sure that we're eating the right foods. We want to make sure that we're not eating a lot. And in order to do that, we have to make the choice of, do I eat all the time and bump up that insulin, right? Or do I make an effort not to eat? So that's my dog ringing the doggy doorbell.
Aw. What's your dog's name?
Tessa.
Oh, cute.
Okay, come here.
What kind of dog is it?
She's a golden doodle.
Oh, so cute. We've been looking at those.
Yeah, oh, she's wonderful. She's just, these dogs are sweet, they're smart, and very friendly, very sociable, really good with kids.
Speaking of that,
Mhm.
how important is it to give your dog good nutrition? I mean, what type of things should you be feeding your dog?
That's a good question. That is, it's interesting. A lot of people were feeding their dogs grains for a long, long time. And it turns out that dogs were having food allergies, right? So they're having food allergies to grains. And so now the food manufacturers are on board taking the grains out of the dog's diet. And they're really promoting a more natural, wild diet. A lot of raw is being involved because that's a dog's natural tendency, and it turns a lot of people off, but raw really is a really healthy way for dogs. Lots of things.
I mean, I know that I have to think there was sugar in her dog treats one morning when I was doing a podcast, and she was in her little bed, and I had given her a dog treat so she could be, a good girl and podcasting.
Like my dog.
And she started going crazy, jumping up and down, like a kid.
I'm sure.
And I think it had sugar in the dog treat.
Yeah, I took Tessa to her puppy obedience class, and the trainer kept giving her treats, cookies, was packed with sugar. And I finally had to say no more. She kept, she started doing it, and I stopped her after about the third one. I said, please, I don't want my dog to have that, sugar. They're real cookies.
Yeah,
I don't even eat them. But, she was listening with the sugar treats. So.
I mean, after that experience, I'm like, I can see why you wouldn't want to give it to your kids either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to keep them in line. But yeah, and so that, we probably should talk a little bit about what is a healthy diet. Should there be sugar involved?
Right.
And, outside of intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet. So yeah, we want to optimize our health. So our diet is, as I mentioned, 90% of what we experience in terms of the benefits we see, the quality of health that we see, and of course the alternative is true. And genetic expression, we are all unique, we're all definitely different, but generally across the board we're the same. Okay. And so when I recommend something, I recommend it not because I know for a fact you're going to, do well at this, but generally the general population does. So we have, we want to make sure that we get a lot of vegetables in our diet, a lot of their berries, blueberries, for example, blackberries, strawberries. We want leafy greens, coffee, chocolate, dark chocolate, 80% or more cacao is very important. Anything less, you see a lot of chocolate recommendations at 70%. That's too much sugar in there, okay? And it's actually causing people to eat more of it than they need. So when you go 80 or higher, you're good to go. It helps stop cravings. And so all of those foods, coffee, tea, like green tea, for example, all teas, they're packed with polyphenols, and these are antioxidants that actually stop inflammation. They can help reverse cellular inflammation, and that includes the fat cell as well. So there are certain foods like blueberries, a spice called turmeric, that is extremely beneficial in terms of reversing the inflammation within the fat cell, shrinking that fat cell. And I talk more about this in my last book, How to Fight Fatflammation. But it's very important to make sure that you add anti-inflammatory foods to every meal. If you make it on a consistent basis your choice to add anti-inflammatory foods to every meal, grass-fed meats, pasture-raised chicken, and the products from these animals, you will your health will change, your weight will change. And then we have sugar. So people say to me, well, can I have sugar? You know, you can, but I really find that when people eat sugar, they want more of it. They become addicted to it.
Right.
I was addicted to it, so I know what that's all about. And so I try to keep people away from that, not even using healthy sweeteners either. I don't want them to really necessarily do that. So, because the brain is tricky, you know, if it believes that, you know, sugar is forthcoming, then you do start to, you possibly can trigger the insulin response, and you can possibly start craving sugar again. So we have to keep that insulin level down.
What is a typical day of intermittent fasting? Because I know there's a lot of listeners out there that may be confused and don't even know how to begin.
Can I hold on for 1 second?
Oh, sure. Let me check and see if you guys have any questions while we're on here then.
All right. She's out.
Oh, we have some comments. Let's see.
Is 1 second.
Oh, sure. I don't know how to make it be quiet. Let me check and see if you guys have any questions while we're on here. We'll have to definitely do some editing. I can't get it to turn down. Oh my gosh. Well, hi guys, and I'm gonna have to shut the live feed down. Let me check and see if you guys have any questions while we're on here. I'll have to definitely do some editing. Oh, there we go. All right, back to the question. How do the listeners out there do a day of intermittent fasting? Just spell that out for them in the easiest way possible to begin.
All right. So I recommend that if you are going to do intermittent fasting, that you start reducing your carbohydrate intake before you jump into it, okay? There's different ways of intermittent fasting. And when you take those baby steps to the intermittent fasting, whatever type you choose to do, you are beginning to be less reliant on glucose. You're less of a sugar burner, okay? Your ultimate goal is to be a fat burner. And so there are different types of intermittent fasting. There's something called 16-8, which is what I do, which is I simply just don't eat breakfast, and my first meal is about 12, okay? And then I have an 8-hour window if I choose to eat. And you can eat your snacks, you can eat your meals. And as I mentioned before, you still eat less calories overall. You're still really eating less calories. And then there's blocks of fasting. People will do 1 day, 24 hours. They'll do 2 days, 3 days. It just depends on what they choose. And there are some people, I know Gandhi went for 21 days, you know, it's like, but you know, those are, and people in religions do fasting, different types of, most religions, in fact, have some type of fasting in their culture. So don't be afraid of it, all right? So that's the first thing I want to say. Hunger, you should never be afraid that you're going to be hungry. You can't die from intermittent fasting. You know, skipping one meal is not going to be a problem. You know, people have fasted overnight to have a blood test taken the next day. That's intermittent fasting, okay? So when you fast, if you don't get up and eat during the night, you are fasting, okay? It is, my dog again, I'm so sorry. So what happens when you get up during the night and eat, you stop that fasting process. You stop the ketone bodies, okay? And so when you're intermittent fasting, that's what you're doing, is you're increasing the ketones, and that's the goal. So and a good example would be your first meal of the day. I always say fat first to break the fast. Okay, so mine, let's say, is at lunch. I would have some avocado, or I would have some macadamia nuts to break the fast, or a cup of bone broth, right, which has really healthy collagen in it. If you have any type of digestive issue, fasting is fantastic for you because you're resting your digestive system. And so what I do is I'll have a huge salad, okay, of dark leafy greens, and I'll add in a tablespoon of MCT oil, which I think we talked about on your last show, which is medium chain triglycerides. It's short for that. And these also provide ketones, promote ketones. It also boosts metabolism and protects brain health, promotes focus. So MCT oil is a great oil to add, very healthy to whatever you want. It has no taste. Okay, so I do that. I add in some chia seeds to that, and some onion powder, some garlic powder, and anything else. I like to use like dandelion greens, arugula, and spinach is what I had yesterday. So that's that. And then I'll have some form of protein. Like I had a rotisserie chicken. I had a little bit of that and some chocolate afterwards. So that was what I had for lunch.
And people are going to love you. You're saying their favorite word. They're like, wait, Linda, you didn't tell me I could have chocolate.
But it really is, you can have really delicious foods on intermittent fasting. And I do sometimes, most times, a combination of keto foods and, as you can tell, and a keto meal, for example, and intermittent fasting. So when you do that, you really tamp down on that insulin response and get all the benefits that I mentioned earlier.
And what about exercise if, per se, I do a 2-3 day fast? Is it discouraged or encouraged?
No, it's actually encouraged because assuming that your body has the ability and it's used to using fat for fuel, okay? Because if you're used to burning sugar, your body's dependent upon insulin, upon carbohydrates for that glucose, then it's going to be a nightmare, all right? So you have to make sure that you're totally a fat burner. And then what happens is that you gain more muscle mass, you become more fit, it promotes athletic ability when you exercise on a fast. And
nice.
if you have trouble with it, that means you're not completely yet able to do that.
Okay, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And when you say we should have fat directly after a fast, is that because we're replacing fat stores, energy that we burned, or what is the reasoning behind why we should do the fat?
No, it's because you don't want to negate the benefits that you've accrued by not increasing your insulin. Okay. So fat doesn't have any effect hardly on our insulin response. And so that's why fat's always a good way to ease into so I always say fat first because it eases you into eating, right? And so if you were to break a fast with like chips and crackers or even healthy crackers or whatever, you don't want to do that.
Okay, good to know. I'm sure a lot of people out there probably have broken their fast that way. They're like, oops. But yeah, that's good to know that you don't want to run the thing you just did, right? Right.
And so a couple of the things people may encounter would be in terms of not eating. So if you decide that you want to do intermittent fasting, if you have disordered eating and in the past, this may not be for you because you're very food focused, right? You're like, you may be one of those that's, okay, when can I eat again? Very watching the clock. And then the other thing is that a lot of people, if they have issues with food, will overeat on their next meal, their very first meal, I mean. So they become very bloated and feel very uncomfortable. Now, having said that, when you first start it, you will feel a little uncomfortable because you're not used to eating that much food. You need to make sure you get the right micronutrients, minerals in particular, throughout your 2 meals. But some people will overdo it and not feel well afterwards. And then there's that reliance upon caffeine. Okay, a lot of people love caffeine. It takes away the desire to eat. And when you first start out, there's really a period of time, a good week or two, sometimes to a month, where you just want to eat. Your body is so used to eating at a certain time. Our bodies, everything in our bodies based on circadian rhythm, right? It all flows on a natural circadian rhythm, even our gut bacteria. And so every day, if you were used to eating breakfast at 8 o'clock, when that 8 o'clock rolls around, your stomach's going to be growling. Eventually, that all goes away. And depending upon how quick it happens for you, we're all different, so it's hard to say. But so that's something. So people will drink coffee to tamp down on the appetite, okay? But in the process, what they're doing is they're also dehydrating themselves with that excess caffeine. And so if they're drinking too much coffee, there's too much caffeine, and most people aren't drinking enough water anyway. And I need to add a note here. You need to drink a lot of water when you're fasting. Very important, because remember I was talking about the autophagy. It is very important to get rid of all that debris that's being released from the cell, all the toxins, okay? And so, yeah, very important not to overdo it on caffeine. And I think, you know, for the most part, most people are okay with intermittent fasting. Women have a harder time with it. We're so finely tuned hormonally that it can mess with our hormones. It may stop the menstrual cycle for some women. If that happens, immediately get off. You really want to be careful with being a woman. So if you're not feeling right when you start it, always listen to your body and make sure that you stop doing it and see how you feel afterwards, you know, when you resume your normal diet. And, you know, the benefits, however, though, outweigh in a huge way the negatives, okay, of intermittent fasting. And one huge benefit is that you increase human growth hormone. A lot of people have an issue with the fact they think, well, if I'm not eating, I'm going to be losing muscle mass.
Right,
And,
right. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
That's one of the complaints.
Right. Or my metabolism's going to slow, you know?
Right.
But that's not true, because our body is designed to keep our muscles intact when we're fasting, unless we go to a severe calorie deficit. So human growth hormone is what keeps the muscles intact and keeps our metabolism humming.
Now, you said there's not very many cons and that the pros far outweigh the negatives, but who should not is there anyone that should not intermittent fast? And what are some of the negatives, the downside of doing it?
Right. So people with diabetes should not do intermittent fasting. Ketogenic diet is something different, however. People that are hypoglycemic should not. Pregnant women should not, or nursing mothers should not, because they need that energy to feed the baby, and the baby needs to grow. And people, again, who have had disordered eating in the past, unless it's not been an issue for a long, long, long time, and you're good with food, okay, your relationship to food. And as I mentioned, women in general tend to have a more challenging time with intermittent fasting. I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it. But most women are okay with it, but there are some women that, it really wrecks their hormones, it wrecks their sleep. So we want to make sure that, we want to keep things, it's really a pattern of eating. It's not a diet per se. The ketogenic diet is called a diet, but it really is a way of eating. And so both are very healthy, but we also have to listen to our bodies, no matter what type of eating you're doing, whether you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet or what, you need to listen, pay attention.
Well, I love that. Now, I had heard on JJ Virgin's podcast when she was on the last episode that it could be bad for you if your thyroid is out of whack to do a ketogenic diet. And her reasoning was because you're not getting enough fuel for the thyroid. What is your take on that?
Yeah, there are some people that where their thyroid is affected. However, in my experience, it's people who have been on they've been doing the ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting for a long, long time. And that's why it's really important to go cycle in and do it, cycle out and do it. Same with intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Every day can affect your thyroid. But there are people, again, we're all unique, that not a problem, right? You can go and it doesn't affect you. So in general, I would say it doesn't affect most people, but it's very important, you know, and you don't really know if your thyroid's affected or not. So the only way you do know is by testing. And so that's something that I always recommend people get tested anyway for their inflammation level, their homocysteine, their CRP, homocysteine, and their thyroid, very important, as well as their vitamin D levels.
So what are some of the tests then? Do they have specific names?
So the inflammation test, there are two. There's the CRP, C-reactive protein test, very inexpensive, very important information. That's one test to take if above them all, because if you have inflammation, you know, things need to change. So if you're, you know, at a low level of inflammation, that's good information to know. If you're high, that's information that you can use as well to change things. Homocysteine is another important marker to get tested for in terms of inflammation. And, you know, like I said, when you have that information, a lot of people are afraid to get the information, but it is just that. It's information for you to use, and then you can change, you know, you can make changes.
That's really great information. I know a lot of people out there will be writing this down because, you know, this isn't always something you hear when you go to your general practitioner. And
right. You have to ask for it. That is
yeah, you have to ask for it. You've got to be informed, reading books like Lori's and just listening to podcasts and really, you know, researching for yourself. Like Chalene Johnson says, it's the science of one. So what might work for me might not work for you because we are all different. So you have to experiment a little bit on yourself. And I think doing that in an educated way, if you have these tests, you're going to be a little bit more sure about which direction to take. And after listening to Lori today, I think we all got some really good info. I know you have a really cool project coming up with the Discovery Channel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yes. So there's a new docuseries that's going to be on called Reversed, and they're taking people with diabetes and they're reversing their diabetes. And it was a hit last year. It's on Discovery and A&E, and I'll be a health expert on the show. And it's going to be another hit show. They have a great ability to help heal people and educate the audience. So important because, you know, diabetes is rampant, type 2 diabetes in our society. So, so this is a show I'm very, very proud to be a part of, for sure.
It's really great. Now, when will this air again?
This fall. So it
airs. And on the Discovery Channel, correct?
And A&E, right.
This is going to be great. I can't wait to watch, and very inspiring for people out there that are looking for help. And then, you know, maybe a lot of people will get some new information to turn their health around.
Yeah, it's very, you know, very important to just take small baby steps. Like I said about the intermittent fasting, you know, take small steps, start reducing your carbohydrate intake slowly and get used to not relying so much on glucose for fuel. And then you can take the step into intermittent fasting. And, you know, maybe go when you wake up in the morning, instead of eating breakfast at 8, eat it at 10 a.m. and then push it back and see how far you go. And that's the best way to do it, the most successful.
I'm really curious as how, and you have your doctorate in psychology?
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up in the health, the health field?
Good question. So I used to do family counseling especially for families at risk, right? And they were typically families that were struggling financially, or, they just didn't have the direction they needed to have. And so my health has always been really a priority for me. It's been, even as a child, my mother would just shake her head, watch, I'd be 9 years old reading a health something or other. And, but anyway, I would write out, their grocery list, what kinds of foods I should buy. And I would tell them what kinds of foods they should be eating. And lo and behold, their health changed. Their children's health changed. They became more manageable. The parents became more motivated, and they went out and they found jobs. They went back to school. And, it's amazing what food does to our mental well-being. It is truly amazing. It's an epigenetic factor that, meaning that the environment, what you eat, thoughts you think, who you surround yourself with, all of that conspires to affect your genetic expression. It doesn't change your basic gene, but it changes the effect, okay? So I became vice president, and then I decided, I think I'm gonna go back to school. Like, I really wanted to do that, and get my degree in nutrition, became a nutritionist, and started, and then I also went and got my degree in life coaching, and became a health coach. And so that's how I started.
I love that story. I'm glad I asked. That is a great story. I just want to acknowledge you for showing us all that with better health, we can become better with age. And you are just one of the sweetest people that I have met in this business. So I truly, truly enjoy my time with you. And I thank you so much for being a voice to help others to better their health. And I just really appreciate everything that you do.
You're so sweet. Thank you. That means a lot to me, really. So, and the feeling is truly mutual. Sister.
Sisterhood. Where can everybody reach you on social media, and where can they find your books?
You can find me on Twitter, Lori Shemek. You can find me on my Facebook page, Dr. Lori Shemek. In both places, every day I post something that will help create a quality, healthy life, okay? And you can find my book anywhere books are sold, on Amazon, for example. My book, How to Fight Fat Inflammation, will help reverse cellular inflammation and fat cell inflammation, helping you to lose weight and create optimal health. And my other book, Fire Up Your Fat Burn, you can find on my website or Amazon as well.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Make sure to give us a review in iTunes and let Lori know how much you enjoyed this and benefited from this podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll check you out later.